How's everybody? Well, we're dealing with the retrograde. I think it will become much more smoother when the retrograde is over. But we're going to jump right in. Uh, Pluto in the 10th house. Pluto in the 10th house speaks about a couple of things. Now, we can't discuss all of them in 20 minutes, but what would be more important with Pluto in the 10th house is that Pluto in the 10th house speaks of a dynamic of absolute and total power. Now, power can mean many things to many people, but there is definitely a standard definition when it comes to power. The 10th house, which is ruled by Capricorn, also is a house of power, the power of the career, for one thing. One thing is to have like a job in McDonald's. Another is to have a job as a therapist. The 6th house, which belongs to Virgo, deals with blue collar work, the working class. But the 10th house does not deal at all with blue collar work or the working class. It deals with the exclusive, those who rule government, and the powerful elites. And they can all be one and the same. When you're born with Pluto in Capricorn or in the 10th house, there is a dynamic power play within the person's family. Because Pluto, being in the 10th house, opposes the 4th house, which is Cancer, which is the home, the family. So in Pluto opposing the 4th house, it's actually far more relevant than the position of Pluto in the 10th house. The career and ambition of a person born with Pluto in the 10th house will not kick in until much later in the person's life. Okay? And when it does, it's very subtle energy. It's not the type of energy that's out in your face. But what does become apparent almost immediately is the opposition of Pluto to the 4th house of Cancer. Here we have the family, the matriarch. We also have past lives, memories, also connections with the historic past going beyond the soul. It also rules the burial, real estate, property, taxes, and securities. It begins in Cancer with the 4th house, and then it culminates in the 10th house. So with Pluto in the 10th house, you're going to be born into a family dynamic where there is either your family is very wealthy or very poor, not in between. Or you may have family members that work for government and work closely with the elites. Or maybe one of your family members is an elite going back many generations, like the royal bloodline. People that have royal bloodline have very strong accents of Pluto in the 10th house. Because the 10th house is also the house of the elites and royal bloodline. And so is the 4th house. So there is evidence here that if you're born with Pluto in the 10th house, you may have royal blood. Or you could have what's called royal rival. Because the 4th house rules past life dynamics and past life conflicts. And it is positioned in the 4th house of Cancer. the family. There may be family vendettas, or your family could be connected to the mafia. One Bugsy or Goodfellas, those gangster mafia shows, they depict Pluto in the 10th house. Scarface with Al Pacino, you gotta watch. I told you, no kids. That's another Pluto in the 10th house. And he was a major drug dealer, killed a lot of people. People died around him, and he was wealthy and sexy. But there was death all around him. This is classic of Pluto and Scorpio and the 8th house. But when we find it in the 10th house, everybody sees who you are. Everybody knows you are the top nigga or the top bitch. Because at least with the 8th house and the 4th house, these virtues could be hidden. But when we're talking about the 10th house, it is there for everybody in society, the rich or the poor, the great or the small, to see. So with Pluto in the 10th house, there's a possibility that you may not feel comfortable in the spotlight. You may not feel comfortable being the top bitch or top nigger at your field. You may want to be humble and meek because the opposition of Pluto to the 4th house can talk about old but very powerful enemies from past lives that will reincarnate in this life to settle a score with you. This is an aspect of Pluto in the 10th house. So there's the family dynamic, pulling from the 4th house of Cancer, which Pluto opposes, regardless of what planets are there or not. This type of this could be true from some of you, not all of you with Pluto in the 10th house. But there is definitely some family bad blood, either amongst the family or with secondary family members. Another aspect of Pluto in the 10th house deals with personal ambition and personal power struggles. Power struggles that come from within. That has nothing to do with somebody bringing any kind of comfort to you. Remember, Pluto opposes the 4th house of Cancer. Cancer is deeply personal, but it can also be deeply impersonal as well. Cancer is shy and retiring. So to have Pluto in the 10th house opposing this gentle house of Cancer can talk about uh, personal development issues. Someone may have a physical handicap or may have suffered a physical handicap when they were young, something that they had to transform, that it took most of their lives to transform. That could have been a serious illness that pretty much took over most of the life of the person, only to be transformed to great health and great prosperity and wealth right along with it. So this is the other dynamic, a personal struggle. The third aspect of Pluto in the 10th house does deal with dynamics in which you relate to other people and other people relate to you. And it's in the work setting that this dynamic will play itself out. You will meet people in the job that you've met before in other lifetimes. And whatever the attitude or the relationship is towards you by these coworkers will mirror the same type of contempt that they had for you in prior lifetimes. The birth chart will detail why they're back into your space in this life and what was not resolved in the past life was now Pluto in the 10th house uh, has to resolve. And it almost always deals with the career. There can be also the possibility of you dying, and I'm talking about, uh, figuratively speaking. You could have a situation where, God forbid, you could die at work. Pluto rules death. An example of this is 9/11, when the towers fell down in the middle of the day. These people were at work and they had no idea that they were going to die that day. This is Pluto in the 10th house. And a lot of people died that day, just very casually. Another situation is career sabotage. That's what's been happening to me. Career sabotage, espionage, you know, plots to kill somebody or destroy someone's career. They are powerful enemies that may engage with you in some form of power struggle. And it is a dynamic that is not new to you or to the experience, but it's something that you're bringing with you from other lifetimes with Pluto in opposition to the fourth house of Cancer. With Pluto in the 10th house, you might experience, some of you, not all of you, and it depends on the chart, might experience fame. Like movie stars have typical Pluto 10th house. Or when they got famous, there was a progression of Pluto by minutes. It's not going to happen by degrees because it could take 30 years for Pluto to move 1 degree or 15 years. So in this case, the astrologer will have to look at the minutes and seconds of the speed of Pluto and then decide whether the minutes will be significant if it's moving it closer to a critical degree. Right? When these transits begin to happen that tight, things or events begin to happen with the person with Pluto in the 10th house. Huh? There may be also the case of trying to manipulate the ordinances of society in some way. An example of that is the internet. You can use the internet to assert power and change public opinion. That's a very powerful position to hold, especially if you have a YouTube channel or some other presence in the media, because Pluto also rules the masses, just like the moon. It rules the masses. Pluto, the esoteric ruler of Cancer, is Pluto. So there may be a public acclaim or the opportunity to be exposed. And this can happen whether you like it or not. With Pluto, it is do or die. Okay? It is do or die. Now, another dynamic of the Pluto in the 10th house is abuse, some kind of mental abuse or some kind of emotional abuse coming from one of the parents. This is also another dynamic of Pluto in the 10th house, where there may be, for example, well, I don't know, you guys are young, um, there are movies like psychological movies, psychological thrillers, like Fatal Attraction. I gotta say that because, I'm old, right? I'm not a youngin' like you guys, so you guys might not remember the movie. You might have to reference other movies. that talk about um, someone who's being stalked, and they're being stalked, and the person feels vulnerable because there is a killer or stalker taking pictures, driving the car, and seeing if the person's in his home, sending pictures or threats. Someone that you may not know, and it happens continuously. It could be someone that murdered you in a past life that wants to do it again in this life. You know, it rules compulsions and stalking behavior. Right? Remember, it is the devil. Right? The devil is Capricorn, and death is Pluto. So, not very good prospects when you put both of them together. But there may be a feeling of persecution, personal persecution, where the person may feel that someone's out to get them, and they don't know how to protect themselves. They don't know how to stop. They don't know who it is. They can't go to the cops because the cops are not going to do anything unless some act was done against the person. So the person sits by themselves in this existential anguish of fearing sometimes for their lives. There's an invisible enemy that they feel is out to destroy them. They may have nightmares or dreams relating to that possibility too. Or some of you, not all of you, may have experienced through dreams the death of your former lives. Again, opposing the fourth house of memory, past life memory in Cancer. So understand that this can go many ways, many ways. Another dynamic of Pluto in the 10th house, which also has a psychological bent and is a familiarity with, let's say you have a boss, and your boss resembles your father in every way. And you can either run away from the situation coming from a traumatic experience with father or mother, or if you've escaped something when you were young concerning abuse and injustice from one of the parents, it will only wait for you in the 10th house when you get older and you enter the workforce. You will re-encounter father again or mother and the pattern of abuse that you had to endure. Pluto, and that's with any house and in a sun, will force you to confront some very powerful and often painful experiences. There may be, well, then we have to talk about the other aspect, which is transformation, personal transformation. No, it is here that people may have near death experiences and then become new people and they get a new revelation. No, that happens with Pluto in the 10th house. Again, opposing the fourth house of memory, dreams, and past life memories. Okay? The dynamic of the family repeats itself in the work setting, in the work environment. You may have people who are co-workers that have gone through exactly the same story that you're going through. All you got to do is ask. So, a lot of dynamics here. Also, we have to talk about the career. It's too tight. We have to talk about the career. With Pluto in the 10th house, you might be at the height of your career and lose it all. Lose it completely. Having to start over. It's not a very easy house for Pluto. But the good things about it is that it does put you in contact with the elites famous people, and there is a possibility for you to become an elite yourself. Right? Let's see how we're going here when it comes to minutes. Okay. So, guys, I hope it was 20 minutes. I really can't see uh, how many minutes has elapsed. But, guys, thank you so much. And now we will proceed with Pluto in the 11th house. I hope this helps somebody.